Hey everybody. Sorry about that very long delay between videos. A lot has happened in my life from when I started this tutorial series. For one, I passed the bar and became a lawyer, so that's been very busy. I've also been doing a lot more world building, making worlds for different groups, primarily the Goon Squad, and I've learned a lot. And the thing is, I would probably do a lot of this differently now, but I don't think I taught you anything that would be necessarily destructive or bad habit forming. So my plan is to go back and do an advanced modeling tutorial someday just to kind of get you up to speed with the new stuff I've been doing. But for now, if you've already made this room and you're ready to texture it, then we're good to go. All right, let's get into texturing. So let me show you kind of how texturing works in general. I'm just going to put a cube in here. The first thing you're going to want to do is hold down Z and go to Material Preview. You'll see that everything turns white. Now this way we can actually see any of the textures we apply. If you just want to model without texturing, you can just go back to solid. So where do we get textures? Well, you can get them online from a lot of different websites, usually free. However, this one is pretty well touted. It's got a lot of good stuff that we're going to use. So polyhaven.com, that's where you're going to want to start. We're going to go down here to textures and click browse textures. Now, just to start off, we're just going to want a wall and a floor. So we can kind of look over here. You can see floor textures, so let's click that. I think we want a wooden floor, so we can go down to probably clean, get us something, and then right there. Now the thing about these textures is almost everyone uses Polyhaven textures, and so if you want to be unique, you might want to go look elsewhere or try and find a texture that doesn't look as common. But for now, this one will work. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make sure it's set to 2K, and you're going to click download. Once you download it, you'll be able to save it to wherever you keep your materials, and I highly recommend keeping a folder with all your materials in one place. You're going to save that. So you're going to unzip it using whatever unzipping program you have, and unzip it to the materials folder. And when you go into the folder where you're saving all your materials, you should see a folder labeled with the material that you just downloaded. So we're going to go into textures, and you'll see that there are a bunch of different things here. This is what the floor should look like, but you're seeing a grayscale version, a white version, there's a red version, and all of these. And don't worry, we're going to go through all of this. It's really not that complicated. In fact, this is one of the best part of textures, is that they're not just flat images sitting on your mesh. These little pictures here essentially help bring depth and make it actually look like there is modeled planks of wood in the floor, for instance. So how do we apply this? Let me show you. Now that we have a texture, let's apply it. What we're going to do is we're going to come down here and click the Materials tab. We're going to click New, and we're going to double click this, change it to Wood Floor. Now, come down here, you'll see that we have these two windows in the shading slot. All you have to do is click Principled BSDF, Control-Shift-T, navigate to wherever you saved that new material. So once you navigate to the folder where you have all these, you're going to select them all, and you're just going to click Principal Texture Setup or Enter. And now look at that. You can see that it kind of looks like there's grooves in it, and that's because of what we call the normal map, which is what one of those images was out of the several that we saw in the folder. And it kind of tells the computer how to make it look like there's bumps and ridges. Now if we want to change how this looks, we need to go to UV editing. We're going to go back to material preview for this. You need to set that anytime you go to a new one of these tabs. What we're going to do is we're going to click this. We're in object mode. I'm going to hit tab to go into edit mode. And now you'll see each face is kind of set over this texture that we have. So what you can do is if you grab all these and make them bigger or smaller, you'll change how it looks. And now it naturally kind of flows over each other right now. But you could just take one face, for instance, and make it totally different. You know, in this instance, you wouldn't, but that is something you can do. So let's apply this to the floor. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to click our floor. I'm going to go back into the shading tab. And the cool thing is, because we already set this material, everything's going to be saved. So we're just going to go to, instead of clicking new, go to Browse Materials, click our wood floor, and voila. Now obviously that's too big. So we're going to go back into UV editing. We're going to tab in, select the whole floor, come over here, make sure that we're selecting all the faces in our UV editing pane. Hit S to scale, and let's just get this looking a little bit more normal sized. And I'm just kind of eyeballing this. Now one thing you'll notice is that this is messed up. The reason for that is because our mesh is a little wonky, and so the computer just had a difficult time figuring out how to arrange this. So let me teach you how to fix this. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit select all of this. You're going to be in this pane, and you're going to hit U, and you're going to click Unwrap. Now it didn't fully fix it, but as you can see, it did another unwrap, and that's a method you can use. Sometimes that works, but because it didn't work this time, we're going to try a different method. So hit U, and let's try Smart UV Project this time. Hit Enter, and look at that, much better. It's just different ways of doing it. Sometimes it won't be perfect. So I'm going to tell you one more method you can use for UV projection. So I'm just going to go straight up top. I'm going to click U, Project from View, and now it just kind of perfectly wraps it around from the direction I'm looking at it. I use this a lot for stuff like floors and walls because it can be just very helpful to be straight on. So look at that. There you go. Now you have a wood floor. Alright. Now that we've got the floor done, let's look at these walls, which is going to be a little bit different because we've got a couple of them, and we want to make sure that the texture wraps around evenly. So I already went and doing the same method I just showed you. I got a wall texture off the Polyhaven website, so let's add that again. We'll just start on this one. I'm going to go over here, click New, make this wall, Control-Shift-T, going to go to my wall, and I will put this texture in the description if you like it. And voila, got a beige wall in there. Now, one thing that you need to know about these textures is this is material preview. This isn't necessarily how it's actually going to look. It's kind of just got this big, kind of bright look to it because it wants to make sure you can see what the textures actually look like. In-game, you're going to have lighting, and you'll have a lot of different ways to make these colors work. And I'm going to show you how to make changes to these colors. Like, for instance, I don't really like this beige, so we're going to make it a little bit more white, which I will show you after we get this set up. So now that we have our texture, let's go to each one and just put the wall on it. Unfortunately, you can't select all and put the texture on. There's other ways to do it. Honestly, if you've only got a couple, you might as well just do this, though. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is that now that we have our texture on all the walls, I'm going to shift-click every wall. So we've got them all. I'm going to hit Tab, hit A. Oh, sorry, we're going to UV editing so we can see what we're doing. Now you can see that this is what the UV is going to look like. It's a little messy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go U, and let's see what Unwrap looks like. So you can see Unwrap just kind of lays it out over without any real thought, and so that leaves us with different sizes and inconsistencies. It's just not that pretty. So let's try U, Smart UV Project. That looks a little better. Looks like we're a lot more aligned on the size, and everything kind of wraps nicely, but it's a little big. Textures are usually pretty big at first. So we'll just keep sizing this up till we're happy. And that looks good to me. Very nice, very nice. Alright, now that we have the walls textured, as I said before, I don't like this color at all. So we're going to fix that. Now, I use Photoshop typically when I'm editing textures. You can use any photo editing software you want, but I'm going to teach you how to do it using this website. So this website is called Photopea. It's free to use, and so I'm going to show you how to do it on this just so that way anyone can use it. If you use Photoshop, you'll find the process is essentially almost exactly the same. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to go to our texture for the wall, and what we're going to do is we're going to grab what is called the diffuse. DIFF, it pretty much is the texture, the image that looks like how the texture appears. So there's ours right there. You can see it's all beige. We don't like that. So there's a couple different ways you can change colors. So if you go to Image and Adjustments, You can do color balance, and you can just kind of start moving these around, see if you get a color you like. This isn't going to be what I want though, because I just want to make this white. So I'm actually just going to go to Image, Adjustments, Black and White. But that's more gray than white, so I'm going to go to Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast. I'm going to up that brightness a bit until it's a nice kind of white, and then I'm going to use a little bit of contrast to keep some of those bumps in there. So one thing you got to be careful of is washing out all the details. Frankly, for the sake of this tutorial, I think it's just going to be fine, especially because we still have the normal maps as before. The one thing you don't want to be doing is resizing this, because those images all work on top of each other. So now that we like this color, I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to, do not click Save, because that will just overwrite the diffuse you already have in there, and then you have to go download it again if you want that same color. We're going to go down to Export as PNG. And that's where you're going to see this. You're going to just go all the way to the end and hit white. Sorry about that. That's my last pass. Just hit save, and then save it in the same folder that your other textures are in. And then we're going to go back to Blender. All right, now that we have that new color, I'm going to go back to our Materials tab. I'm going to go to Shading. And you can see that our wall material is still in here. And I'm going to look into this pile right here, and I'm going to look for what is called the diffuse or base color. So that's usually second on the list. So I'm going to click this little folder, and it should open up the same folder that had the materials or the textures in it rather that you were using before, and that should have your white version. So you're going to double click that, and then look at that. I know it doesn't work right now because everything else is white, but we still have a little bit of our bumps and our ridges there, and I think it's going to look really good when everything else comes together. Alright, next up we're going to be doing all the metal. Now, I'll probably want this to be silver metal, I'll probably want this to be like gold metal, and you want a lot of options. This might be black metal frames for the photos and all that. And so rather than make 3 separate materials that are all going to be metallic, we're going to do something and make an atlas. Now an atlas is essentially one image that has a bunch of different images on it. Now we're going to be using this for both the metals, any generic colors we want, and for the photos. So let's start with the metals. So to do this, we're going to go back into Photopea. Alright, now that we're back in Photopea, we're going to click New Project. And over here, you don't have to really title it unless you want to. We're going to make the width and the height 2048 by 2048. If you're paying attention, we were looking at the textures earlier. That's essentially a 2K resolution. That's basically what we want for this. So, you can make sure you've got a white background. Everything else can stay the same. Just click Create. Okay, so I'm going to click the rectangle. I'm going to double click. And if we want 16 of these to fit in 2048 by 2048, it's going to be 512 by 512, which will automatically happen if you have this aspect ratio on. So when you hit OK, look at that. So we'll come up to here, make sure we have our move tool, put that right there. If you want to be organized, you can color it over here. That's totally fine. Now that we have one, I'm just going to hit Control J, and that copies it. I'm going to move it over, snap it next to it. If I double click that layer, it'll just let me change the color immediately. So I'm going to come back here, get a little bit of a gray going on. Let's hit Control J again. Let's double click. Let's get a gold color going. Doesn't have to be perfect right now. Something like that. Ooh, nice. Okay. So now we got black, silver, gold. That's good for now. One thing we can do is we'll make sure we save this so we can come back to it later. But as long as these colors stay in the exact same spot, you can essentially start using this now and then finish it out later as you go. And I'll show you how that works. Okay, now that we like this, we're going to go to File, Export as PNG. Save it as whatever you want. Make sure it's 2048, 2048. Then hit Save. And now you'll be able to put it anywhere you want. So I recommend just putting this in your Blender folder for this project. You should always just kind of have one main folder for your Blender projects that hold, everything that you need. So I'm going to do that here. I'm just saving locally on my end. All right, now that we're back in Blender, what we're going to do is, let's start with the sink. I'm going to select this, go down and hit New Material. Just going to call this Metal Atlas. I will point out you should name all your materials something very apparent and easy to remember. It'll help us when we switch over to Unity. So what we're going to do here is, rather than go to the shading menu, we can do everything we need to do right from here. You're going to click this little yellow dot next to base color, change that to image texture. You're going to go to open, and you're going to get the material that you just created, aka the Metal Atlas. Alright, so there it is. So let's first make sure that the color is applied properly, because we have 3 different colors in this, and we only want the silver one for this. So what we're going to do is come over here, Metal Atlas. If you don't see the Metal Atlas over here, you can come up here, type Metal Atlas. Perfect. Hit A to select everything. Usually with anything circular, I like to just Smart UV project it, even if it looked okay. And you really don't have to worry about the UV placement too much beyond making sure that you size it down to be within that color. And now look at that. But it's not very metallic, and that's okay. Very easy to fix. All you have to do is look at these, just drag that metallic up, maybe bring the roughness down a little bit. You can have fun with it. Just get something neutral, since you're going to be applying this all over the place. And now, I mean, if you were doing a very specific sort of niche Blender project, you know, maybe you'd want to actually use several different metals and all that, and different materials, so you can get different roughnesses and such. But one big thing about building for VRChat is that you're making compromises, because it's just not a super optimized game. And so the less materials we can load in overall, the way better our world will be, the smaller it will be, etc. But that's stuff you'll start seeing once we get to the Unity side of things. Let's spice this up a little bit. I can hit L over this, because this was a separate thing that we made earlier and extended out. So just by hitting L over that, I selected that. I'm just going to hit G on our UV editor. Go right there. Now we add a little bit of, you know, do it over on the handle too. Just add a little bit of variety to it. But that's still just all one material. Very cool. We can do it over here too. Tab in, or first of all, you got to apply the material. So we'll do Metal Atlas. And then for this, don't worry, we'll be able to add the fabrics. I'll show you how that works. I'm going to hit L on the pole, make that silver. For all of these bad boys, going to hit L over them, the curtain rings. I'm just going to make these gold, and that's S to scale it. And there you go, all one material. You can do it over here too with these. Just hit L after you hover your cursor over each individual object. And voila. Very cool. Alright folks, we will start applying this metal to various other things, like the handles on the drawers and stuff, and we'll start working on fabrics, and I'll teach you how to do the photos. But since this is hitting the 20-minute mark, I think this is a good place to stop and let you continue working on this. I promise this next tutorial will come out very soon. I promise. I promise I'm not going to take another year. But we're going to continue texturing this, and I think I've taught you everything you need to know to actually finish it out on your own if you want. That said, I am going to come back and make sure that I do more detailed stuff like the fabrics, teach you how to do the photos, all of that. So, have fun, start texturing, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.